to the front of your head. Scientists at the University of Oxford, UK, came to a similar conclusion. Participants were asked to complete a detailed account of their standard diet. They were then given a series of cognitive tests. Those who consistently ate foods rich in flavonoids like the chocolate, wine, or tea, they scored significantly higher on tests than those who had scant flavonoid consumption. When the diet is teeming with these compounds, the risk of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and stroke is reduced as well. There you go, folks. I need no more impetus than that to continue eating dark chocolate pretty much every day. And the article continues by saying, choose wisely. The typical chocolate bar will do little except swell the waistline and increase the prospect of developing type 2 diabetes. To maximize the health benefits of chocolate, only exceptional quality will do. Organic, extra dark, and that means at least 70% cocoa, and preferably raw. Remember, the higher the cocoa content, the lower the sugar. Unsweetened products. Unsweetened cocoa powdered products are acceptable as long as it's not processed with alkali. Eating large quantities is unnecessary. A small square of dark chocolate or a cup of low-sugar cocoa beverage per day is adequate. And I'm assuming when they say a cup, they're probably speaking of an 8-ounce serving. With intelligent use, chocolate is an excellent food for protecting and improving the brain. As a delicious daily habit, a spot of chocolate will help keep the mind sharp and cognitive disease at bay. So let's see, if you drink a cup of coffee, have a bar of very dark chocolate or square, and do a crossword puzzle, you have a good system for fighting off some of the brain diseases we're all very afraid to contract. And that again was from the Natural News. That came in today. That came in yesterday. So that's our good news. Let's see what else we can find today that you might be interested in hearing. There is some news, some things going on overseas. And the article comes from the Irish Times. Let's see if I'm going to pull that up for you here. There's an ongoing situation there. Obviously, our attention has been diverted elsewhere. There have been many things going on with Greece, with Germany, with this bailout of Greece and some of the problems that they're continuing to have. Hasn't been much really in the regular forward news for you to find. But this comes from the Irish Times, and this was posted Friday, November 9th. So even though that's today, it was earlier in our day, later in their day, that this was published by Dan O'Brien. He is the economics editor for the Irish Times. Possible changes in the wider world likely to make the international environment less benign for Ireland than in recent decades were assessed here last week. But what about the issues surrounding the most likely major change, Britain leaving the European Union? After many centuries of semi-detachment from continental affairs, Britain joined the then EEC 4 decades ago. For well over half of the period since, Europe has been among the most diverse issues in British politics. It has become ever more divisive as the balance of forces move against membership. Working in London as an analyst of European affairs for over a decade from 1998, I was constantly struck by the steady and rapid decline in the number of people and organizations holding the view that Britain's national interests were the best served by the EU membership. This was most notable at the political level. On the conservative side, no young pro-Europeans emerged to replace the aging pro-EU politicians. Tories under 50 all today are, to varying degrees and in many different ways, hostile to Europe and see their country a future loser in the arrangement with the EU, if not entirely decoupled from it. On the Labour side, warming interest rather than antipathy. It has come to characterize the attitudes of the majority of the centre-left. Gordon Brown epitomized this. As Chancellor, he was infrequent attendee of the EU financial ministers' meetings. As Prime Minister, he was no more engaged in 2007. For instance, he was the only EU 27 leader not to travel to Portugal to sign the Lisbon Treaty. His successor, Ed Miliband, gave relations with Europe the same low priority. Last week, Labour voted with Tory Eurosceptics to defeat the government's proposed stance on EU budget negotiations. The shift in position of Britain's political class reflects a wider increase in discomfort at the constraints of EU involvements. Support for membership has waned in business and trade unions across the rest of civil society. The media is most hostile. Public opinion mirrors elite opinion. EU-wide opinion polls show that Britons see less gain from membership than people of any other 26 member countries. Recently, national polls have shown for the first time that if a referendum were held on membership now, the secessionists would win convincingly. And if David Cameron recognizes the risks of a premature referendum, he is not ignoring the need to be prepared to exit the EU. In July, Foreign Office began a detailed audit of how powers exercised at EU level impact British interests. This audit, due to be complete in 2012, will provide the basis for Britain's negotiating position on the repatriation of powers from Brussels. But the rest of the bloc is very unlikely to accommodate this. Some see selfish, in parentheses, gain in future, isolating Britain, and many more think it unworkable in principle and in practice for one member state to have de facto a la carte membership. If Britain does not succeed in repatriating powers, the momentum behind withdrawal will grow. For Ireland, having Britain join Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway in the European Economic Area would be by far the least disruptive option, but because EEA members are obliged to accept single market legislation made at EU level while having no say, this would be unacceptable to Britain.
Unacceptable.
Yes. This leaves the Swiss model. Switzerland's relations with the EU are governed by a messy and ever-changing series of bilateral agreements. This framework is unsatisfactory for both sides, but given constraints on each party, it has been impossible to improve on. For Ireland, having Britain to move to such an arrangement outside of the Europe economic, political, and legal multilateral order would have a very negative impact. To limit the damage of our economic relations with Britain and North Ireland could also leave the EU, an option former Taoiseach Michael McDowell appeared to advocate recently. By any economic and political cost/benefit calculation, that option would be even more damaging. Irish trade with the rest of the EU is much greater than that with the UK, and foreign companies locate here for access to the wider EU market, not the UK. This is interesting. Here is Britain again trying to act like they're well above us with those nose firmly upturned into the air. This obviously would be devastating for Ireland, but
Britain's been running Ireland for centuries anyhow.
Well, they gave up rulership in the 1900s, I believe, is when they finally completely were out of there. We can check with Mary from Ireland when she calls in.
Not Queen Mary.
No, not Queen Mary. Although she probably would have made a decent queen. Anyway.
Oh, I would have. Do you elect queens? You know?
No, you can't.
Well, let's elect Mary.
There we go.
She's got the name, but I mean, I would put her in charge of the world, you know, and just because you figure, like, even if she makes mistakes, her heart's going to be in the right place. Then
absolutely,
she's pro-humanity, not against it.
Absolutely.
So.
I think, though, that on the larger playing field here, you know, we've talked before about how all of these industrial countries in Europe are all trying to devalue their currency in order to try to generate economic stimulus and regain some strength on a slow process. And obviously Britain doesn't feel that this is going to be the strategy for them to try to boost their own economics, although honestly I don't think they're doing as badly as most of the other industrial countries around them. I can't say that for certainty, but they're certainly not crying as much as China, U.S., France, etc.
Greece, as a matter of fact, I've got an article here on Greece, which is, boy, I mean, these guys have been rioting and protesting for so long
yes,
that it becomes normal. I mean, you just get tired of hearing it about it in the news.
Well, I had promised our listeners that we would find out what's going on in Greece. As I had mentioned before, so many of the things that are going on overseas have just been faded with all this just hype and ridiculousness over the election.
Well, a far-reaching national strike against new austerity measures has left Greece paralyzed. Thousands are marching in the streets of Athens in protest against measures that unions say will sink the country's already flagging economy. The 48-hour strikes have brought most of the country to a standstill, shutting down public transport, schools, and air traffic control. Hospitals are also working with skeleton crews. Broadcasts and publications were halted until further notice as journalists joined the nationwide strike. This quote from Russian correspondent Peter Oliver wrote on Twitter, about 10,000 people on Syntagma Square right now. More arriving, all peaceful. 10,000 people. Police cordoned off areas around government buildings in Athens in preparation for possible violence. Extra officers were also called for crowd control during the demonstrations. The protests are expected to continue throughout the week, culminating on Wednesday to coincide with the parliamentary vote on the new austerity measures. The new round of budget cuts the Greek parliament will vote on Wednesday has enraged a population already exhausted by economic belt tightening. Athens is currently debating measures that aim to ally bankruptcy through some $17 billion in cuts by 2016. The Greek government remains divided over the issue, with the Democratic Left Party that compromises one-third of the governing coalition refusing to back the measures. The second largest member of the union government, PASOK, has also seen dissension in its ranks, with several MPs refusing to back the package. The measures stipulate a 2-year increase in the Greek retirement age to 67 and several tax hikes. The new package also includes provisions making it easier to fire civil servants, which has provoked the ire of public workers amid a current unemployment rate of over 25%. The austerity package is required for Greece to qualify for a bailout loan from Troika, the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. Previously, austerity measures slowed Greece's economy, shrinking its economy by 1/5 since the financial downturn began in 2007. The outlook for 2013 is bleaker still, with the country's debt at 189% of GDP and further austerity looking increasingly likely. The Greek capital has seen numerous protests over the past month, with Athenians rallying against austerity they criticize as bringing the country perilously close to collapse. An anti-austerity demonstration in Greece have frequently turned violent, leading to clashes between police and disgruntled youths. Nothing new there. So, there you go. Greece is a great example of, like, they're the kind of the canary in the coal mine at the moment. These guys are experiencing what I feel and many others do. Ultimately, all these countries will experience an attempt at the government to convince you that this debt that was basically gambling debts by Wall Street bankers and central banks and private owners of those central banks, intentionally collapsing and devaluing our currency while rising up incredible debt, meanwhile telling us that we have to make budget cuts, increase taxes, and give less services. Caitlin?
I don't know what to say. I just can't. Greece is really the foundation here, the founding that is going to set the tone for the other little countries that are going to end up following. It's interesting. I'm hoping that Ireland is not going to fall into this morass with the others. But what is Portugal going to do? They're not even as pulled together as Greece.
Directly tied to Spain. Basically, it's kind of a series of dominoes. If Greece falls, it's going to cause some problems for sure. It would definitely cause a restructure of the European Union, which is already probably in the plans, in the work.
It must be in the works already, because look at how France and the other healthier countries were not even participating in the talks when Chancellor Merkel from Germany was over there, and they were primarily putting the pressure on Germany to come up with the funds.
Interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting.
And what do the German people, if you're listening in Germany right now, the number to call in is 414-935-2951. We'd like to hear your opinion. Do you think you should continue bailing out the Greeks? God bless them, because honestly, I don't think these bailouts don't work, because what is happening, the money is going to Wall Street, not Main Street, in all these countries. Basically, banks are holding on to the money. They're covering their spreadsheets so that they don't come up insolvent, and they're very reticent to loan that money to us, the little guys down here. As a matter of fact, an interesting note, just kind of a sideline note. Some friends of mine are trying to put together a small business over here. And to do this, they decided to order their products from China. Why? Well, everybody else has been doing it. They figure, look, we got to have that competitive edge. Let's get China to manufacture our products. They set up the deal. They spent the money. And customs is holding their produce, products in hold. They can't get the stuff out. And my comment to them was, it's kind of sad. Like, apparently only big corporations can exploit the slave labor in China. The little guys don't get it. I'm not saying it's right that we exploit the slave labor in China. But, it's amazing how just like, bottom line, only big corporate monopolies will be able to run things. Not us. Not us.
Well, this happens frequently, and this is one of the things when people are making business plans. This is one of the things that you have to provide time and money in your initial startup budget for, because this frequently happens. And I don't think that the situation with Homeland Security is actually alleviating this issue. But yes, containers can be held indefinitely now, and of course someone can go bankrupt in the process. And it's not just with small companies, it's with other natural disasters that happen, people who have products in containers, or even their home furnishings in containers as they're moving back to the United States have the same issue. Their stuff is held indefinitely because of just unbelievably paranoid.
And let's look at the trend here. The overall past development is that we've deindustrialized the West, and not we, but the legislators and the people, the rich monopoly corporatists. They've attempted to send all the manufacturing and industry to countries such as China, Brazil, wherever they can get a cheap.
Indonesia, Malaysia, even India,
Korea, Taiwan. God forbid that we should have a job here. And like a lot of the liberal mentality here in this country is that, well, you can't make a $22 T-shirt. You bloody well can if you don't, if you abolish slavery once and for all. But apparently we condone it every time we spend money on it. And you're saying, well, I'm just trying to save a buck. But really, we're slitting our throats in the process, aren't we?
I think we are. I know people in the riverwest community that will pay full prices or more prices to shop locally than to get in a car and go, or jump on a bus and go out to Franklin to a Walmart or something of that sort. And, if you look at it in the final analysis, what you're paying for car insurance, car maintenance, fuel,
that was
time, everything, that 30 cents you might save, or even sometimes it's 50 cents difference. It's lost in the air pollution and everything.
Well, you talk about the pollution in the stores itself. When I walk into these stores, the off-gassing of these manufacturing products, the toxic chemicals are everywhere. I don't know why people can't smell them, but it's just I'm hypersensitive to it. It's like walking down the detergent section of a grocery store. You wonder why you feel a little woozy. Not only do the colors just bash you in the eyes and make you epileptic, just staring at the... Like, what is it about, like... crazy psychedelic appearing laundry boxes that make it, and then the perfumes, the dyes, everything's petrochemical based. Did you know it takes like 7 gallons of oil just to make one tire?
Oh my gosh.
I believe it's 7 or 8 gallons of oil just to make one tire. And in other words, just to make your cups, your plastic, your products, you got to realize that not only does it take oil, but it takes water, fresh water, to process that. And so, the amount of resources we're wasting, and the exploitation of the resources is one thing, but it's all the due diligence is only to keep us as a petroleum-based economy.
Well, here's a good example. Whatever happened to the impetus to get rid of plastic bags? We really had a whole lot of stuff going on the last couple of years about, get your own shopping bags. Stores should be phasing out plastic bags like they did in California.
I'll tell you what,
and it all fell apart.
I think I know what happened, Caitlin. I was wondering about that myself. People are using them as garbage bags. They're free garbage bags, okay? Rather than
doggy collection bags?
Why go pay $5 for a box of bags that you're going to throw away when the grocery store gives them to you for free? People are taking them home, and they're using those grocery bags in the little small waste baskets. Those small garbage bags are expensive. So, I mean, just a theory on my part.
Those plastic bags are the epitome of petrochemical abuse that you are stating right now. What does it take to make them? What are they made of? It's all petrochemicals. If we're going to reduce our dependency, it has to be not just on gasoline and oil, but it also has to be on all the other products that they generate. And those plastic bags, other countries don't even allow that. They don't even have plastic bags. For instance, you go to Ireland, even France, you bring your own freaking bags.
It's not that hard.
That's just how it is.
I'd like to see glass jars and not plastic jars.
Oh my goodness. They're selling soy sauce. I could not get soy sauce in glass. And I went to the Asian market. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So it gets better when it gets older. Not if you're aging it in plastic.
It doesn't. You get that plastic taste. I mean, that's like keeping wine in plastic. Are you crazy?
And it even has, I've never seen this. The plastic soy sauce even has an expiration date on it. So they must know that this stuff goes bad in plastic.
Oh, man. But you know what? I think all we're going to do is... I don't see any trends reversing. I mean, like you said, there is a small growing movement of green conscious people that are trying to attempt to reduce their dependency on petroleum products. But really, overall, I mean...
I think we have to do what California has done. I mean, I see that we look at Pacific coast states and overseas to really follow the leader here, and California has banned those plastic bags. And I'm sorry, I know that takes some people's rights away, but come on, folks, look at the damage those stupid little things do.
Right. I mean, look, I for one, what you're touching on, the ban, the right to, I mean, look. I'm hyper vigilant myself against like unnecessary laws and controlling regulations that just keep us from operating. But there's nothing wrong with all of us getting together and voting on these things and saying, hey, collectively, we don't want these plastic bags. But the plastic bags in themselves are just a symptom of what the real cause is, the underlying cause. And that's the fact that we do not acknowledge that we are completely dependent on oil. It's not really going to change without changing radically. When instead of making these radical change, look, isn't it funny how we cannot seem to get one solar power company in this country worth a damn to produce something? Solyndra went under, and there was just a big fiasco leading back to Barack Obama.
I don't think they're being encouraged. I think it's like Tucker and his car. Ford didn't want him to survive, so they found ways to destroy him. And I think solar power is a threat, so is wind power. And if we can go that way...
And I heard they got some new breakthroughs in the solar power, too.
I'm sure they have.
You know, that it is feasible. It is possible, but it's just not going to happen in any large-scale movement because... Look, after we're done working our hard jobs all day long, after we get home and do the dishes and pick up the groceries and the laundry, help the kids with their homework, everybody's kind of just too tired. Those who have kids, continue their work, go to bed and get ready for the next day. Those that are single, just hit the bars, watch the television. And my point being that we just there's no time ever that seems appropriate to actually address issues or use our energy during the day to actually make an activist change.
I don't think it's time. I think that we're being poisoned by our environment, we're being poisoned by our food, and I think that we're physically tired and uninspired because we don't feel well on a very low-grade basis, very low-grade level.
And
I think it's hard to overcome that. And I think most people who go through the drudgery of working every day, look at how they're feeding themselves with the donuts and the coffee.
It's just sugar's keeping us going.
Right, but sugar doesn't. Sugar does. I mean, sugar may have a great mouth appeal and a short-term emotional
I just
response.
had an almond nut muffin myself, yes.
But I also know that you're going to eat vegetables.
That's
and
all I'm
protein.
going to, and that's
right.
all I'm going to have for the day.
Right, but I'm talking about how people are living off this kind of, that's their first meal of the day, their break time snack, their lunchtime. How sick must you feel at the end of the day?
And then the children in the, what they call the, impoverished areas and communities throughout America, basically low-income families that only have ghetto marts and convenience stores, which aren't so damn convenient after all, to eat off of. One thing I heard that Obama's wife, whatever her name is, she said she wants to get actual
Michelle.
She wants to get food in those ghetto marts, and
yes,
out of all the stuff, I would agree. Let's get actual food. If you had to make regulations, like stupid regulations, I would like to see regulations that says, look, if you run a convenience store, you have to actually sell food, but we know why they don't.
Everything's processed, of course.
There's a reason why Americans themselves don't run the convenience stores, and only these foreigners do, or the descendants or immediate immigrants of foreigners. And I'm not a xenophobe, so bear with me here. But these guys come in, they're tax exempt, they actually get on welfare, then they take the welfare checks and go buy like 80 boxes of Kellogg's cereal for $2 a pop, a buck a pop. Yeah, and then sell it for $4. And then there's no nutrition. And then these poor kids, they go to school on Coca-Cola and a Snickers bar and a bag of chips, and you expect them to perform when they've just been drugged by those three things.
Right, and you expect them to even have any kind of view for the future. It takes a lot of personal momentum to get over a lot of this, and I think the adults are tired. I think they want to feel better. I know there are just tons of adults, 20-somethings and 30-somethings, going, why am I so tired at the end of the day? I want to be able to go out and do stuff. I want to take a walk with my girlfriend or wife. I want to do stuff with my kid, but I don't feel good. I'm tired.
Caitlin, I exercise. I eat as well as I can. I take nutrients and supplements. And sometimes, damn it, I get home and I'm tired.
Yeah.
I just am. And I ask myself what you just asked, like, why? How can I be so bloody tired? I'm like trying to do all the things I can to not, I wish I was a raving ball of energy. It's just...
I just don't think that we can do enough, because even if we can have better water and better food, and I know that you do your best to take, into account. Yeah, and I do too. I may not be to the level that you are, and I'm certainly not a vegan, but...
Well, you're not as old as I am either.
We try to do the right things, but even so, I find right now, to me, more distressing is the air in our environment more than anything else. We have systems to take care of water. We can make better food choices. We can buy organic from local farmers, but we can't do much about what they're putting in the air right now.
But Big Agra can't monopolize the organic movement. They're trying.
Yeah, Prop 37 lost, I guess, in California.
No, did it?